This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
A respected dentist, a father of 6, a husband to his wife of over 20 years. What could possibly go wrong? And allegedly a man who poisoned her slowly over days, weeks, all while texting her, "I love you," dropping, Visine smoothies over to her, Googling how to make murder look like a heart attack, and smiling bedside as she slipped into a coma. Yes, it's the case of James Craig, the Colorado dentist currently on trial for allegedly killing his wife Angela with cyanide and eye drop chemicals while carrying on an affair and planning his escape. Behind the toxology reports and the courtroom drama is a far more unsettling question. What kind of person actually does this? And why? Today we're joined by psychotherapist and author Siobhan Scott, who might have some insight into how one might be driven to orchestrate this kind of betrayal, how someone can weaponize love, and what the psychological profile of James Craig may reveal if we assume he's guilty. It's going to be very interesting. Siobhan, also the author of this book right here, The Minds of Mass Killers, which might play into this a little bit as well. Siobhan, let's just kind of jump on in here. He's this charming man, has this life out there that people respect. He's big in his church. People see him. He's been around in practice for a while. What's going on here? What causes someone to lead a double life like is alleged of James Craig, to go on from that, but to be able to do this at the same time?
Well, if this is not a portrait of you could go either way, psychopathic narcissist or a narcissistic psychopath. It's a big dose of both. And talk about a person who can wear the mask of sanity. And again, this church-going family with this incredibly hidden dark side. And he compartmentalizes very well. The forethought and planning with this is really striking. This is a guy that had been thinking about getting away with this for a long time and working towards it. And obviously doesn't like direct confrontation, but likes the sense of control over watching his power, to kill. And so he's full of himself. He wants to be the savior. He wants people to look at him with admiration. And that's the narcissistic part. He wants to be this loving husband. And yet the cruelty of a psychopath who can just murder, as you say, the mother of their children. I mean, it's really horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the family pictures and they're all standing there in scenic locations and everybody's smiling and it's a big family. You're like, oh my God, wow. I mean, that takes work. I mean, it takes work to keep that family together, to have gone on this long, 20 years. You got the 6. Everybody, looks happy in the photos, which means absolutely nothing, as we know. But my goodness, what a way to manipulate. How, in a case like this, because we're hearing other stories of other people who were charmed by him. There was a story of a woman in the office who had an affair with him prior to the other woman, or at least an emotional affair is how it was described. I mean, a narcissist like this, they don't necessarily stand out holding red flags saying, beware of me. They use that charm to disarm suspicion. Let's talk about that for a little bit and how this guy was presenting out to the world.
He was good at that. He may not have been good at covering his tracks on the internet, but he was good at charm. And I was having a conversation with a therapist last week, and we were talking about psychopaths, and she said, I know immediately when I meet someone and they just charm me, and I'm so impressed with them. She said, that's a red flag that I need to step back and take a look. Is this a psychopathic person? And it's just one of these things that's so hard for normal people people who, we don't go around looking at the world as who can we manipulate here today? Who can we get away with, fooling and tricking? But that's how folks like this go through the world. It's all a game to them. Everybody is an object that they can maneuver somehow.
Is it also a problem when you are someone who may recognize this, like your friend was? Because if you do say it aloud and everybody else is like, wow, they're wonderful. How could you say that about that person? Mm-hmm. That seems to be the other big factor that allows folks like this to kind of get away with it or go on for so long. Because even if you are the one to stand up and say there's something really, really off here, if and they know how to work it, it's part of their thing is getting the public opinion in their favor and to really squash any sort of dissent around them that somebody may be saying, this does not seem to be the type of person that they seem to be. I'm wondering how much of that was going on in this guy's world, considering he's out there doing public seminars, speaking engagements, traveling around. He seemed to know how to work it.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's going to be this sense of peer pressure to go along with the story about what a great guy he is. And I mean, we see, as strange as it may seem, that politicians and ministers and salespeople tend to be really high in psychopathic traits. They've at least got some of these manipulative qualities. And sometimes they're beloved by, all kinds of people in their worlds.
I mean, what does it take to psychologically balance public persona versus private malevolence? Because, I mean, the two just, if you're a healthy brain, it's like, why would you be so dark over here when you're so bright over here? It seems like you really have to shift. I mean, is this someone who, he's got to be conscious of both versions of himself, but to flip both ways so quickly or live in that world simultaneously, that's a spooky way of living, because it's like compartmentalization, but it's like living simultaneously. Or is that where the word psychopath comes into play?
That's exactly it. And if you can get a person like this to be honest with you, they really get a sense of pleasure every time they fool somebody. It's almost like a little high, a little rush. Look what I got away with here. And they use that charm. And this, again, we're talking about an intelligent psychopath. Not all of them are that smart, and those are the ones that are in prison, early in life. But I think in this case, this guy was just really good at it, probably fooled everybody in his church.
And that's what I want to talk about for a second is, again, he's a Mormon. Add it to the list of the insane amount of Mormons that are lining our list of alleged killers in the last handful of years, unproportionately to other groups of religious people. I don't know what it is, but we've been seeing it. How might the religious environment, and I'm not trying to insult Mormons here, but he was LDS, he was Mormon, could that have created or added pressure to maintain that moral mask? Or can it even foster this kind of behavior, deeper repression or dysfunction just by nature of what it is?
I think religious groups are a really good place for people like this to go because they role play so well. And there's such an emphasis, you use the word moral, emphasis on morality and on doing the right thing and giving this appearance. It's almost like it's a place where they gain power and they can maneuver really well in it. So it may be that we find more of these people active in religious groups. I mean, I think of the BTK killer was, the elder in his church, because they get away with fooling people there. And people may be more trusting. Most of them, I'm sure, are good people, moral people. And so when they see somebody like this come into the fold, or who was raised in the fold. I don't know if he was raised in this faith or came into it later, but it fits for them as far as having a flock of people that they can manipulate.
Is religion a dangerous thing to a psychopath in a way that they could adopt it? Where, I mean, because religion, for the most part, if you're talking about some version of Christianity or something of a sort, it's very much, well, just, believe and be baptized and you're going to be saved and all your sins are washed away. All of them. Mm-hmm. All of them. It doesn't matter what you did. It's like literally anything can be washed away. And if you have a propensity to, I don't know, kill, and you got a group here telling you you're okay. Like your moral fabric says you're okay. You're forgiven for all of that. Is there a level where that almost encourages horrible behavior in a very non-intentional way?
That's a really interesting take. And I honestly have never thought about that. So kudos to you, Tony, for bringing that up. But yeah, the idea of your sins being washed away when you've got this incredible list of sins, could that feed the narcissism? That, the ability, how does a person like this sleep with them, go to bed at night and sleep with the things that they've done during the day? And may they have this little cognitive twist where, I'm forgiven. It's all okay. Certainly could be.
Because it's the same thing that gives people peace who aren't killers, if they're into religion. It's the same sort of thinking in a certain way of just give it to God or the higher power, and it will, because I'll get, caught up in something and my mind will be going and I'll be thinking about it all night and I won't, well, just give it to God. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that easy for me to just and it's nothing I've done wrong. It's more so like focusing on these cases and these people. But it's also the very same principle that many use when they're believers of, okay, I'm just going to give it to God and I'm going to feel good over here. When it's, regular, horrible things. This over here, same sort of method of reasoning, I guess, compartmentalization of, I gave it to God, it's gone. Same thinking, just two different extremes, really.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And it would also explain all the pastors, these mega church evangelists who have gotten in trouble for exploiting people in their church sexually. And, again, that looks pretty darn psychopathic. And do they play this little cognitive game where, well, all is forgiven at the end of the day?
I feel like it plays a bigger role than a lot want to admit. Let's talk about the murder itself, the method of the killing, because that always is a big factor in any of these cases. It points a lot to motivation, how they're feeling about the person. Is this a crime of passion? This was a really sick one. The method of killing was slow. It was poison. It was methodical. It was slowly introduced over time into her body, allegedly, if he's the one who did it. And she slowly fell into a coma after about 15 days and then eventually died. All the while he's going to her bedside and holding her hand and then taking a really horrible picture of her and sending it to his side chick. It's twisted. This slow way of killing someone and watching it daily. What does that tell you about a character like that?
Somebody who's incredibly into the control, the secrecy, the appearing to be the savior. Look what a loving husband I am, but absolutely devoid of empathy. And that's the piece that's, I think, so scary. Yeah, not a crime of passion. He didn't stab her. He didn't strangle her. And in that way, it gives him more distance from it, as if this is just something that's happening, even though, of course, he's the one instigating it all. It's, again, something that a normal person could never wrap their head around. It's insidious.
With someone like this, is it more about assuming he did it, and obviously he's innocent until proven guilty? Is it about the sadism of it? Is it about the control, or is there, I mean, control certainly plays into this. Is the control level there because he's fearing the confrontation if he were to do this like a healthy individual and just get divorced? Fear of physical confrontation or verbal confrontation, of being called out for all the downfalls that he has, all of the affairs, and God knows what else is failing in business. Because obviously narcissists, one of the last thing they like, kryptonite is reality. It's being called out. And if you're going to leave a relationship of all this time because of the things you did, you're going to have to face the music. Is this just a way that someone like this has to go? They have to eliminate the person because they couldn't tolerate, they couldn't deal with that actual piece of reality coming to haunt them.
I think there is that. There's the saving face, the denial on his part that he's responsible for it because, gee, it was just a little bit of poison, in the smoothie every day. Mm-hmm. So he can keep this psychological distance from it. And the other thing that popped into my head is he does not have to pay spousal support. If she's just gone. And the guy has problems with money. And I'm sure if he was looking at what he was going to be paying in spousal support after a 20-year marriage and 6 kids, he might never be financially solvent again because she was going to be getting a lot of money. And this just eliminates that. And this guy's obviously selfish.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, he's out there having these affairs, living this life while things all continue to implode all around him. And there's a lot of weird things that went on here. We're going to get into some of it here in just a bit of what was going on behind the jail walls, what he was asking people to do. But before we get to that, when you're trying to evaluate somebody like this, trying to figure out what is going on, and witnesses said, Craigie was calm, even jovial at times in the hospital, just, acting, I don't know what normal is to look like if you have your partner literally dying there. Is there a right way to act in that sort of a situation, or would really anything not stand out when your loved one is literally at death's door as far as their behavior goes?
I think that being able to act jovial and calm in that situation is a huge red flag, because for any of us, as I have, as you probably have, if we've ever been through a terminal illness with a loved one, a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, there's nothing more traumatizing than watching someone at the final phase of life. It's horrible. We're sad. We're tearful, And so the ability to seem normal and even jovial at times when your loved one is in this kind of situation, life-threatening, again, a huge red flag.
One of the defense arguments that's being made, and it's hard to say argument because it's so insane, is that basically it was kind of like a suicide game of chicken that was going on. That he had been suicidal earlier in life or a couple years ago, and maybe he got some stuff then, but the stuff that he had ordered for this one, he was getting at her behest, according to the defense, because she was suicidal. So basically, they're saying she's suicidal. She tells him this. He, being the loving husband that he is, goes and buys cyanide and I forget the name of the chemical in the Visine, and then just gets a whole bunch of it and just leaves it at the house. Here you go, honey. If you're feeling down today and you want to end it, I got you this through Amazon. Quite literally, was a Prime Day special. Who knew? But, and that may or may not be true, the Prime Day special, but he did get some of it through Amazon, which was kind of shocking to find out. What does that say about someone like this when they're able to try and pitch this as a reasonable way of looking at the case that I didn't kill her. I just bought the stuff so she could do it. That's love.
If this is the best they can come up with, I don't think the guy has a prayer. You know, that is just the stupidest thing I have ever heard. And if I were a defense attorney, I would be embarrassed to try to make that. I'd encourage him to take a plea bargain here. It's ridiculous.
It would be a difficult one, I think, to spin to a jury. But, crazier things have happened. All they need is that one. They just need the one person to go and say, yeah, I thought about letting my significant other kill themselves. I just bought a whole bunch of bacon grease and wanted to see what would happen. Didn't work out very well. The method of killing on this, obviously, that was a big thing. Of the slow death that his wife had to endure. What emotionally is going on with somebody like that? Not the wife, but him. I mean, or is the answer just nothing? Is it just, well, this is part of the process? It's like literally just reading notes. It's like, well, once this is checked off the list at this timestamp, then we can move on to the next part of our project. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we can't know for sure. It's possible that it's just this incredible disconnection emotionally, and he knows he has to pretend like he cares and act loving and compassionate, but inside it's just check the box here. We've gotten this far, we're going to keep going. And it may also, just speculating, have given him this little sense of pleasure of, I'm duping everyone, look what I'm getting away with, and aren't I terrific? So he could have had a little bit of an elevated mood about it, which is horrible.
Yeah. Another crazy aspect of this case is his attempted involvement of his daughter from behind bars. And this is something, when this whole case started, when we heard about the dentist that allegedly poisoned his wife with the smoothies, and we heard about the Google searches like 3 years ago, I was like, wow, and this is bad. But it got worse in that time. Behind bars, one of the things he did, and there were several things he did behind bars, and we'll get to those, was ask his daughter to create a deep fake video of his wife, now dead, admitting that she was going to commit suicide. Now, clearly he doesn't know how these sort of things work. It's not easy to do something like that. And would it be figured out and caught pretty quickly? Yes. But he seemed to think that this is a world that they live in where he could just ask, his daughter to go create that sort of thing. What a weird request to ask of your daughter, and to think that she's going to actually do it and not end up testifying against you in court, which she just did last week. What does that say about his mental state in terms of the control he thinks he has over those close to him?
That's exactly it. It's almost bizarre. Well, it is bizarre that he thinks he can come up with something like this, and that his daughter is not going to have a shocked reaction. It's, very poor judgment. But again, the narcissism, this idea, I can get away with things. And he has gotten away with a lot in life. But this is, somebody who's desperate and thinks he's got more power than clearly he has.
It makes you wonder what else. I mean, we're talking a 20-year marriage here. We don't know what went on behind the scenes. You got 6 kids. There's a lot of things going on here. I'm going to guess there was a lot of psychological grooming behind the scenes. To a certain extent. We don't really have a ton of evidence of it, but the fact that they were together for this long, that says something. And the fact that he thought he could ask his kids to do that, or his daughter to do that, it does make you wonder, what was his grooming not as effective as he thought he was? And I'm wondering if that's a common thing amongst, psychopaths that also obviously have a lot of narcissistic traits, or narcissists as well. Do they sometimes overestimate their level of influence on those around them when they get to that psychopath level, worse than just your average narcissist would, who maybe is a little more gauged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, narcissists do have, if they don't have psychopathic traits, a lot do, but if they don't, they do have an internal sense of morality. I mean, it's different than everyone else's because they can certainly, they always put themselves first and they're not high in empathy, but they're not killers. And that's when you get the psychopathic part in there because they truly, they have no conscience if it's a full-blown psychopath. And so you get this narcissist thinking, well, I'm more powerful than perhaps I really am, but they are so full of themselves that they'll take it to this kind of extreme, and that's what makes them so different from the rest of us.
And this doesn't sound like a family, from what we know, at least mom and dad, that were in the healthiest of places, either or. I mean, we're taking the word of James Craig right now somewhat as gospel that his wife was suicidal. I believe there are some pieces of evidence here and there that may show she was not in a super healthy place at various points in their relationship. There's also evidence that shows that he was not in very healthy places in that relationship and also had been contemplating suicide. Does that put the risk factor up that much more higher if your partner is already kind of on that place? Let's say James already was at that place with no care in the world for himself or his own well-being, where he might, order the cyanide and off himself, especially when he's the one that's still alive and she's dead, as far as the lengths that one will go if they're already there?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because the other thing, when I was hearing some of the reports about his suicidal ideation in the past, was that real, or was that part of a game? Was that part of a way to manipulate her or someone else? I don't know who knew about it, but that can be another tool that a manipulative person will use, is this thing of, oh, I'm just going to off myself in hopes of gaining some kind of control through getting the other partner to respond to them in a way that they want.
How dangerous is it of a time? I know it's the most dangerous time in a relationship is when the partner says, I'm out, I'm leaving. And then obviously all that can go to hell. But this doesn't seem to be that case. It seems to be, from what we understand, he was caught cheating, and it had been ongoing with multiple people for a long time. It almost seemed to be like it was kind of understood that this was what he did for a good chunk of their relationship. At least that's what I'm taking out of it. But then had whatever revelation, went back to his wife, went back to Angela, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm changing. And then slowly after that, she started dying. Should that be a big red flag to anybody in a relationship who's had an abuser, who's been cheating on them left and right for a long period of time, and then suddenly, I'm not going to be that person anymore? Is that the time to really look out for the red flags of, well, this person seemingly made peace with this, and they want you to as well? The odds of them not continuing down the cheating road seem rather low. And I would say the odds of danger to you seem rather high if suddenly they're, Mr. Perfect out of nowhere.
Yeah, 100%. And as I have said for decades, never listen to the words, look at the behavior. And people who have ingrained patterns of behavior, usually what they've been doing in the past is what they're going to continue to do in the future. And, 6 kids, he did not want to get stuck with alimony here with her. And this was truly a dangerous time, but he was so manipulative, she probably didn't have any inkling.
And that's the scary part. And I wonder if the kids did. I mean, that's something we don't know about. We have, I guess, 2 of them so far have been on the stand testifying against their dad about the request to make the deepfake suicide video and such. But it does make you wonder, what are they trying to process right now as mom's dead, dad's on trial for murdering. He's asked us to make a deep fake video. What is going on through their mind as they're sitting on that stand?
absolutely horrible for them. It is so hard when you have a person who's a criminal like this, for their kids to come to a place of integrating it and understanding it, because we all carry traits of our parents. And I think for the children of murderers, how do they come to a place? I mean, they can, but it takes some time and some thought and some mental work of accepting I do have qualities like my dad. Maybe I look like my dad, but I so do not want to be like my dad. And that's a hard thing for them to work out. I have so much compassion for them.
If you start noticing you have some of those traits, whatever it may not like the urge to go kill someone, but
Right.
I don't think he probably lived most of his life with an urge to go kill someone either. It just happened to be the most convenient option at that point in time. But that's got to be a hard thing when you start to look, because we all have our idiosyncrasies. We all have little narcissistic tendencies and things like that, but it
Sure.
doesn't make us all, narcissistic personality disorder with that sort of a diagnosis as well. But that's got to be a really tough thing, especially if you know that, God, this genetically does run in my line. But how much would the behavior of someone like a James Craig be explained as learned behavior from nature versus nurture?
It's a really tough one. We've been trying to answer that for forever. And what I think the best answer now is that genetics have a lot to do with personality, but none of it's set in stone. And you can have some wiring that can make you maybe prone to having less empathy for other people. But then depending on your environment and how you're raised, that the genetics are shaped and molded, and the way that they're expressed can be very, very different. So I don't think anybody inherits the tendency to be a murderer or a killer. And certainly in this case, there's no evidence that we've heard nothing about his kids being in trouble or anything. They were raised in the church. They were raised with a lot of morality, and they may have some of his good qualities, because apparently his ability to connect with people, and, he sounds like he was an extrovert and everybody liked him. His children may have some of those qualities, and that's good. And that's, something that as they try to integrate this story into their life history, that's something that we want people to come to a place of peace. I did get some good things from my parents. I can look at my parents and see major flaws with both of them, but I decided early on that I want to take the good and try to separate myself from the flaws. But that's a process that's just a bit more complicated when you have a parent who's a criminal psychopath who kills somebody.
Which you can read about in her book, Nightbird, available wherever books are sold. Let's continue with the interview. little product placement right there, just a little bit. I have your books like right here. I just can pull them at any time. Got a little library here going on of different.
It's a little reference. Just
I love
flip
it.
to
Yes.
page 67.
It is
and you'll
very
find
good.
It. Yeah.
It is very good. The page. Damn. Wow, that's impressive. Let's talk about a little bit more about James Craig himself. Theoretically, okay. The accusations are there. Obviously, he's innocent until proven guilty. He sits down in your office. I'd like some help, Siobhan. How does that conversation go?
This is a hard one. Yeah, he would like some help. You've got to listen to the story that a person tells about their life. And I've sat with a lot of criminals, in years past, not currently, but in years past. And they've all got a story of reality, what their reality is. And you let them tell it. You take notes, you listen very carefully, and then you start to highlight the inconsistencies, the things that don't add up and don't make sense. And you're very confused, and you voice your confusion about how exactly does A lead to B here, what you're seeing? Because I see some things that don't add up. And typically with a person like this, nothing is ever their fault. it's all just circumstances or misunderstandings, and always other people are out to get them and treating them unfairly. And that's what makes them so difficult to work with, because that version of reality tends to be pretty unshakable. But that's the only thing you can try to do, is shake it and point out evidence. That's one of the programs I worked in with people who had recently been arrested. We always got the police report, because if you just had them come in and tell you their story, they were victims, always. And then you would get the copy of the police report and read it with them in a later visit. And you would get this whole different version of reality. And that's something you have to, over time, try to confront them with. And do they gain insight, or do they just hate the therapist who does that? It's tricky work.
Because the inconsistencies with someone like that, I mean, they come from somewhere, and they're not always just made up lies. Sometimes, right. I mean, they're coming from their prism of how they're interpreting the world.
Yes.
And unless that prism is changed, everything that comes in is going to be inconsistent. And then they're going to base their decisions in life on what that prism took in, which is this inconsistent way of looking at life, while others can look at it and go, this isn't right, like your thinking is off. But they're operating. That's the blueprint. That's what they're going off of. And then, I mean, essentially, that just it kind of just spirals, doesn't it, into this very wrong way of thinking, wrong way of interpreting
100%.
Things.
That's how you know you have a true personality disorder.
Yeah.
And really, the first clinical case I ever sat down with was a guy. This was in a drug abuse counseling program. The guy was on parole, and he had tried to purse snatch a handbag from a little old lady in her 80s or something, and he saw her as an easy target. But she didn't let go of the purse, and so he dragged her and ended up, breaking her arm and her shoulder and, almost killing her. So he went to prison. And so this was my first client. I was in my 20s as a young therapist, and he was a heroin addict and a really sketchy guy. And I'm just kind of going, oh my God, this is great. And so I just said, tell me the story. How did you end up there? How did this happen? What got you in jail? And his whole story, he was a victim. And bottom line, if she had just let go of the purse, none of it would have happened. It wasn't his fault. And it was just mind-boggling that he still believed this. Yeah. Did he make any progress in therapy? Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. He was just jumping through the hoops to be there. But, I have clearly forgotten many of the people I've seen over 30 years, but that one will stick in my head as the first one. And it was my introduction to criminal psychology right there.
Yeah. I mean, when someone thinks like that, and I think we all know people like that on a much smaller scale, not murderous scale or even criminals sometimes, but just, nothing can ever be their fault. It's kryptonite if they're confronted with reality, so they interpret things differently. Can you ever get in front of that prism, or is it just like, look, this prism is cracked? Like if you go to the store, you go to the head shop, hey, look at this prism over here, and let somebody hit it with a hammer. Like, you're not going to fix it. It is cracked. It will always be cracked. Is that just kind of the reality for some folks, that it is cracked and it's going to take a lot of work for that person to ever even start to be able to see the colors out of this prism correctly because it's so broken?
Yeah. I like to hold hope.
Yeah.
But certainly for a lot of folks, no, the prism, as you say, is cracked, and there's just no bringing them into a normal state of reality. I have seen sometimes, particularly in group therapy with multiple people, you've got multiple people in the group who have all committed crimes, who've all got some of these personality typologies, these disorders. Can you make a bit of progress when they start calling each other out? And if you get somebody in a group like that who is coming back to a healthier way of looking at the world, and when they start confronting each other, so it's not just the therapist doing it, some seem to be able to shift. And so that's certainly something that we have the goal is can you bust this criminal mindset and start to call it out in a way that they're held accountable, and if they're held accountable by a peer group, it may work a little bit better.
Could the James Craig case here be an example, again, if he's guilty, he's innocent until proven guilty, of a narcissistic collapse where everything is going wrong for him? I mean, his wife has called him out on the cheating. His partner at the office is like, why are you ordering cyanide left and right? And that's failing as well. He had to bring in this partner because his business was already failing. It's like everything was crumbling down on him at once. And, sometimes when things crumble one way or there's a reaction this way that's strong, people kick back with the same amount of force or worse in the other direction. The fact that there were so many things going on over here in his life, like I just said, was murder the extreme kickback to that? If it had just been one thing, if the business had been failing alone and he hadn't been having affairs, or just one thing, would it have been a murder on the other end? Or was it just he was in such a horrible state over here that his only reaction was literally, fight, and that meant murder of what he viewed as the person who would be the biggest hindrance to his future, his financial future, his emotional future, his reputation? That would have been his wife. And if he got rid of her, then maybe that will help him claw his way out of this collapse that's going on around him.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. He was desperate, and it had been one consequence after another. So what's in his mind the easiest way out of this is just eliminate her and make it look like something that he had nothing to do with, and he could play the caring husband. And it's the act of a desperate psychopath.
He also ordered, or attempted to order, a hit on one of the detectives, and the lead detective in the case, offering $20,000. He was trying to talk with other prisoners about getting that hit carried out. The defense is denying it, saying, oh, no, that's all hearsay. There's no quite proof of that, but prisoners are just lying. And look, prisoners will lie. I get that. So I would hope they'd have a little more evidence than just hearsay on that. But, I mean, this, if it's true, this sounds like a man who from behind bars is really mentally crumbling. The fact that he thinks that he can get the deep fake thing done with his daughter, that he can order a hit on the lead the lead detective, that he can get fake witnesses. I mean, is this someone who is already in obviously a very, is this a case more about a mental state collapse than it is about criminal conspiracy? And should that be looked at a little closer in this? Because this does not seem like a well human being.
It's a desperate human being with a very strange outlook on life, who thinks he can control things. And really, if he would have the kind of collapse where he would go into a depression, where he would say, boy, I have really screwed up. Look at what I've done, and I've been caught, and I'm not the criminal genius that I've always thought I was, then there would be some hope for him. But this bizarre, extreme behavior, it doesn't bode well for his mental health. Yeah.
From what I'm hearing, we have Eric Faddis is inside the courtroom covering this for us. It sounds like he's quite the confident man in court. He looks a lot more confident than the picture here next to me portrays. So he's still, appears to be riding that horse all the way to the end. We'll see where it goes. Makes you wonder. Siobhan Scott, psychotherapist and author of the book Nightbird. This is a new memoir that's out wherever you get books. Do check that out. Also, The Mind of Mass Killers. You can get this as well, understanding and interrupting the pathway to violence. Also, wherever you get books, just search it and you will find very good reads on the topic. Thank you, as always, for your insight into this and the many cases that we got right here, Siobhan.
Thank you.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.